Today I'm going to be showing you how to plant carrots and potatoes if you have limited space. So for the carrots, first you want to pick out your variety. There's a lot of different varieties of carrots out there. There's more than just the regular orange ones that you see at the store. For example, there's purple haze carrots. They have a purple skin and the inside is really pretty orange. There's a few different kind of yellow ones. There's white carrots. And there's purple carrots. The deep purple variety is purple all the way through. A lot of purple carrots, like the one I just mentioned a couple seconds ago, only have the purple skin. So when you peel it or cut them, you'll see orange. But this variety is entirely purple. It's really pretty. And I've heard that dark purple vegetables are actually healthier for you and higher in antioxidants. So decide on a variety that you like. You can find carrot seeds at your local feed store or online. I ordered a lot of mine from Harris Seeds because they have a lot of different varieties there, so make sure you check them out. You can plant carrots in the ground, but where I live there's a lot of rocks in the ground, so it works a lot better for me to do them in containers, and you can fit a lot of carrots in a small container. So you basically just want really loose, fluffy potting soil in here, some aged compost. You can even mix in some sand and some peat moss to help make it nice and fluffy and airy, because you want your soil to be fluffy so that the carrot, since obviously it's a root vegetable, you want it to be able to grow down nice and straight and deep so you can get a good size to the carrot, and that way you can make sure that you can avoid it forking, because if it hits something hard it'll like split and you'll get those carrots with like the weird, like, looks like they have legs. Or if your soil is too dry and hard, you'll just get like a little stump of a carrot, and you don't want that. You can mix some fertilizer in for your carrots. A 10-20-20 works well. You don't want to put in too much nitrogen because then the plant might focus too much on growing the green tops of the carrot instead of the actual carrot itself. I also like to mix in some bone meal. Bone meal is a slow-release fertilizer that's really rich in phosphorus, which encourages root growth and development, and this should feed it through the whole season. For anyone that's not familiar with fertilizer, the fertilizer number on the bag stands for nitrogen, which is the first number, phosphorus, which is the second number, and potassium or potash, which is the last number. Nitrogen helps things grow. Phosphorus helps with root development like we just touched on. And then potassium helps with all-around health. So this isn't the only thing I use because there's no potassium in here. I do like to put in the 10-20-20 fertilizer to help, so that way it gets a little bit of all the macronutrients. Because plants are living things just like us, they need to eat too. Alright, so now we're just going to mix that into the soil. And like you saw down there when I was showing you the different soils that you can use to mix up for your raised beds or your containers, there is one with the shrimp on the cover, and I really like that Lambert Ocean Blend potting mix / compost because it's made with shrimp shell compost, so it's really high in calcium, and calcium helps with overall health, it helps with plant growth. And I especially like to use that compost when I'm planting tomatoes, but we'll touch on that on another video because I will have a whole video on planting tomatoes. But make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that, because a lot of people have trouble with tomatoes, but if you know what you're doing, they're actually really easy to grow. And just remember that they love calcium. People make a lot of common mistakes where the plant won't absorb the calcium that is available properly, especially if you grow tomatoes in containers. So you don't want to miss out on that, because I'll show you all the tips and secrets for planting and growing good tomatoes. So back to the carrots. I'm going to go ahead and make my rows. You want to plant them about 1/4 of an inch deep. You don't have to go down too far. If you find any clumps of soil that are hard like this, just go ahead and break them up with the shovel like I'm doing, so that way it's nice and soft and fluffy. Carrot seeds are extremely tiny, so you want to have some patience when you're planting them. You can buy some that are coated, and the coating makes them a little bit bigger, so it's easier to see them and hold on to them and plant them. But these are just untreated seeds. You can see how small they are. I put them in my shovel, and I'm just going to pick them up and drop them in. You want to plant them about 2 to 3 inches apart, and then just gently cover them up, not too deep. And you'll want to lightly water them. Keep them nice and moist. Don't let the dirt get all hard and dried out, because that's not going to be good for them, especially once the carrot starts to develop. If you let the soil get too dry, it's going to really stunt the growth of the carrot, and it's not going to form properly, and you won't get a good size out of it. Since it's a little bit time consuming to just drop one seed at a time in there, it wouldn't hurt if you just sprinkle some out in your rows, and then once they sprout, go through and thin them so they're 2 to 3 inches apart. That way they have ample space to grow. But thinning also takes time, so I prefer just to get it out of the way now and try to plant them separately the best I can. Now, if you get a heavy rain, sometimes it will push your seeds together and you'll have to come out and thin them anyway. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It's not always 100% avoidable. But if you ever do see any that are growing too close together, definitely try to thin those out. And some carrot varieties will take about 14, sometimes a little bit more days to germinate. So don't panic if you don't see results right away. You can plant them every 2 weeks so that way you don't have to harvest them all at once. And that way you'll also have carrots ready for you throughout the season. You can plant them early spring, and you can also plant them again for a fall crop mid to late summer. And I will say that I like carrots, but once I started growing them myself, I like them a lot more than I used to when I would get them at the store. Homegrown carrots taste so much better. It's like night and day, the difference. It's insane. They're so sweet and delicious once they're fresh from the garden. And I recommend that you grow a lot of them so that way you can freeze them and store some and enjoy them during the winter too. So now that the carrots are planted, we're going to move on to potatoes. So you can grow potatoes right in your ground, but same deal, like I said, with the carrots, there's a lot of rocks in my area, so it's not really worth it for me to do it that way. The ground's really hard here. So I use grow bags, and believe it or not, you could get tons of potatoes out of this little 30-gallon grow bag. I got these on Amazon. If you use a pot or another kind of container for your potatoes, that's fine, but just make sure that there's drainage holes at the bottom, because if these get wet and hold the water, your potatoes are going to rot and you won't get any good results. And you don't have to do this, but I have my grow bags on some gravel here. Well, pea gravel, and it's really nice because that helps with the drainage. So that way it's not just sitting and making like a gross, hot, soupy mess if you get a really, really rainy summer. You can plant your potatoes early spring, and they're very heavy feeders. So along with some light, loose, fluffy soil, similar to like we talked about with the carrots, you want to put in a lot of compost and organic matter. I have chickens, and their manure makes really, really good compost. So I mix that into the bags. And then I also use this all-purpose soil. It also has some peat moss in it to keep it nice and fluffy, and some compost. To save you a little bit of money, if you get a really big, deep grow bag, you can put some cheap topsoil on the bottom to help fill it up, and then put the higher quality stuff in the middle and on top. Oh, and I apologize for the chipping nail polish. This is the reality. If you garden, your nail polish is going to chip, but we're just trying to keep it real here. So I put some triple 19 fertilizer in here and some phosphorus, or the bone meal that we talked about earlier. And now we'll go inside and I'll show you how to prepare the potatoes for planting. So I'm going to be planting Pontiac red potatoes, Adirondack blues, and for just a nice standard white potato, the Eva potato. The Kennebecks are really, really popular, and a lot of people are still dead set on that. Pick whatever variety that you like the best, but just keep in mind that the Kennebec is somewhat of an old variety, and the way I like to explain the Eva is it's kind of like a more improved version of the Kennebec. So it's going to be similar in size and flavor. It's a little bit more hardy when it comes to disease resistance. It's resistant against a lot of different kinds of nematodes, so if you're planting this directly into the ground, that's a really good thing. The yields are typically a little bit better than the Kennebecks. And the Eva potatoes are great. You can use them for baked potatoes, you can use them for baking, you can make potato chips out of them. It's just a very versatile potato. And it has the same name as Eva, the whippet. Eva, did you know that there's a potato named after you? So at most local feed stores or farm stores, you can go buy seed potatoes by the pound. You can plant potatoes from the store, but they usually don't work as well because a lot of potatoes are sprayed with a treatment to prevent them from sprouting, so that way they store a little bit better for you. If you can find actual seed potatoes that have not been treated, that's a better way to go. You'll get better and faster results that way. So this right here is called the eye, and you can see that there's little eyes sprouting in several different places on the potato. Let's look at the red one again. So if you wanted to, and this will also help you save your money, you could just buy a few potatoes, and then every place where there's an eye, go ahead and just slice that part off, and then let it sit overnight and dry and scab over, because if you put the potato into the ground when it's still wet from where you sliced it, there is a slight risk that it could get a disease or infection or some kind of fungus. Now, that chance does go down a lot if you use grow bags. You're a little bit safer then, but it doesn't hurt just to let them sit overnight and dry if you cut them. And then each spot that you did cut, you can go ahead and plant, and you'll get potatoes off of those. You can also plant the whole potato if you want, especially if it's a smaller size potato. If you plant the whole potato itself without dividing it up, I recommend that you pinch off the other eyes and just leave one. And typically you'll get larger sized potatoes off of planting a whole one. You want to plant them with the eyes pointing up and the sliced part, if you do it that way, touching the soil. Alright, so I'm down here ready to start planting. Eva's helping. She's supervising. And since I'm doing some different varieties, I'm just going to mark in front of the bag which one is which. Because potatoes, if you don't know this, they will grow some vines. So if you put like a not a toothpick, a popsicle stick or some kind of marker in here, the vines will overtake it and you won't be able to find it. So you want to plant them at least 6 inches deep. And you can actually fit a pretty good amount of them in here. And each potato or each eye that you plant is going to grow anywhere from 6 to 10 potatoes off of it. So if you are going to do the grow bag or the container method, I recommend that you don't use anything smaller than a 10-gallon. And remember, keep the eye part facing up because that's where the vine's going to come out of. I'm going to plant this one whole and see if we can get some really good giant potatoes off of this one. So I'm going to pinch off the other eyes. I'm going to keep this big one intact. It's always fun to experiment and see what happens when you do things a little bit differently. So let's put that one in. Actually, let's make that a little bit deeper. Now, if you're planting these in the ground, you want to hill them. But in grow bags, it's a little bit easier. You don't have to worry about that quite as much because you can cover it up more. You can make them nice and deep in here. But once they do start to vine out, if any of the potatoes that are starting to form get exposed to the sunlight, make sure you cover them back up quickly because you don't want them to turn green because then they're ruined. Cover them up nice and deep. And you can get about 5 or 6 in here. If you have small potatoes, you can try to get a little bit more, but you also don't want to overcrowd them. You want to make sure they have plenty of room to grow so that they can form properly. And because, like I said earlier, they are heavy feeders, so you don't want them to be competing too much with each other. But this is exactly how I did it last year, and the results were amazing. So I'll put some pictures of those at the end of this video so you can see how they turned out. But make sure you also subscribe so you can follow along with this throughout the whole season, see what we do to take care of them, and then see us harvest them. Now after this, because I have the slow release fertilizer and a lot of organic matter in here, you really don't have to do too much besides keeping them watered so they don't dry out, but don't let it be overwatered and saturated because like I said, they can rot. But if you do want to fertilize them again, go ahead and do it right when they start to blossom their flowers. Alright, I'm going to finish filling up all of these with the potatoes. Make sure you subscribe and check back because I am also going to be showing you how to do sweet potatoes as well. I got some really big 65-gallon grow bags for the sweet potatoes. I'll show you how to fill them up with soil, how to get those started. Sweet potatoes like it slightly more warm than these potatoes do, so I should be getting those plants in a couple weeks. A little bit closer to May is when we usually start getting them around here. So I'll show you how to do that.